What if the smartest financial decision you could make right now has nothing to do with crypto, stocks, or real estate, and everything to do with your kitchen? Here's something the news isn't talking about loudly enough. The U.S. cattle herd has shrunk to its smallest size in 75 years. 70% of winter wheat is currently being hit by drought, and inflation, even when it slows down, never actually goes backward. Every single month, the dollar in your pocket buys a little less than it did before. But here's what's interesting. Two completely different organizations, a federal emergency agency and one of the most tight-knit religious communities in America, have independently arrived at nearly the exact same answer to this problem. And that answer isn't complicated, it isn't expensive, and you can start it this weekend with one trip to the grocery store. In this video, you're going to learn a proven, layered system for building a food supply that protects your family from short-term disasters, long-term inflation, and everything in between. We're going to cover what to buy, how much to store, where to put it, and what mistakes most people make that cause them to waste hundreds of dollars without even realizing it. Stay until the end because the last section is where most people go wrong, and it's the part that determines whether your food storage actually works or quietly fails you over time. Welcome to Food Decider, the channel that helps you make smarter, more confident choices for your kitchen and your future. If that sounds like something your household needs, hit subscribe right now, and let's get into it. Let's start by completely reframing how you think about this topic, because the word prepper carries a lot of baggage that might be holding you back. When most people hear that word, they imagine someone in a bunker waiting for the end of the world, but that mental image is actually costing ordinary families money every single day, because the most likely emergency you will face in the next 12 months isn't a zombie apocalypse. It's a grocery bill that's 30% higher than it was 2 years ago and a paycheck that hasn't kept up. Think about this for a moment. When you buy a can of food today, you are locking in today's price. You are essentially parking your money in a physical asset that you will absolutely use, that doesn't lose value, and that beats inflation by definition. A stocked pantry is a savings account you can eat, and unlike a savings account, nobody can freeze it, crash it, or charge you fees on it. For anyone living on a fixed income, retirees, single-income households, families stretched thin, buying next year's calories at today's prices is one of the most practical budget strategies available. It's not dramatic, it's just math. Now, before we talk about building anything long-term, we need to establish the baseline. And for that, we turn to FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which has spent decades studying what households actually need to survive the first phase of any disruption. FEMA's recommendations are built around what they call the 3-day window. This is the period immediately following a disaster, a hurricane, a major power outage, a supply chain interruption, where you cannot count on stores being open, utilities being available, or help arriving. Their guidelines are deliberately simple, because in a real emergency, simple is what works. The FEMA floor focuses on foods that require no refrigeration, no cooking, and ideally no preparation at all. We're talking about ready-to-eat canned meats like tuna and chicken, peanut butter, which is calorie-dense and shelf-stable, canned fruits and vegetables, which provide not just nutrition but also hydration, and water, 1 gallon per person per day for both drinking and basic hygiene. That last one sounds like a lot until you realize how fast a family of 4 burns through supplies when there's no running water. FEMA also highlights something that almost nobody thinks about until it's too late: medication. Right now, roughly half of all Americans depend on at least one daily prescription. In a crisis scenario, pharmacies close, supply chains for medication get disrupted just like food supply chains do. The recommendation is to treat your medicine cabinet exactly the way you treat your pantry. Keep a buffer. Keep a small rotating stock of pain relievers, antacids, and where possible, a conversation with your doctor about maintaining a slightly larger supply of any chronic condition medications. And here's a detail that seems minor until you're standing in the dark. Keep cash on hand, in small bills. When the power goes out, credit card readers stop working, ATMs go offline. The ability to hand someone a $20 bill becomes genuinely valuable. Now, there's one more thing on the FEMA list that sounds almost too obvious to mention, but it's one of the most commonly forgotten items in any emergency kit: a manual can opener. Not an electric one, a manual one. Keep 2, because if you have a pantry full of canned goods and no way to open them, you've built yourself a very expensive and very frustrating problem. The FEMA system gives you your starting point. It's the floor, but it only covers 3 days. And what happens on day 4? That's where the second part of this story begins. There is a community in the United States that has, for generations, built food security into the very fabric of daily life. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, commonly referred to as the LDS Church, has developed what they call the Provident Living System, and it has been refined and tested over decades of real-world application. What makes it remarkable isn't just that it works.
It's that it agrees almost perfectly with what FEMA recommends at the baseline level, and then goes far beyond it in a way that's methodical, affordable, and designed for real families eating real food. The first layer of this system is what they call the 3-month supply, and the core principle behind it is deceptively simple: store what you eat and eat what you store. This is where the single most expensive mistake in the entire preparedness world lives. People get motivated, go online, and buy what's marketed as a survival food bucket, a sealed container full of freeze-dried meals with names like Mountain House Lasagna or Emergency Chili Blend. They spend $200 or $300, stack the bucket in the corner of a closet, and feel prepared. And then their family never touches it, because the kids don't like the taste, because it requires more water than they expected, because in a stressful situation, unfamiliar food on top of an already difficult experience actually makes things worse, not better. And eventually, years later, they throw it out, expired, unopened, wasted. The LDS approach eliminates this problem entirely with a system called FIFO, first in, first out. Instead of buying special survival food, you simply buy more of what you already buy. If your family eats pasta twice a week, you buy 6 extra boxes instead of 1. If you go through 2 jars of pasta sauce a month, you keep 8 on hand instead of 2. You put the newest purchases at the back of the shelf and pull from the front. Your pantry becomes a naturally rotating system, and nothing expires because you're always consuming and replacing. The financial barrier to this is lower than most people expect. You don't need to invest $1,000 up front. By adding just $10 to $15 to your weekly grocery bill, 1 or 2 extra items per trip, you can build a genuine 3-month supply within roughly 6 months. That's it. Gradual, manageable, and completely debt-free. Now, 3 months of familiar food is a powerful buffer, but the LDS system doesn't stop there. The second layer is designed for something entirely different: genuine long-term security. And this is where the science gets genuinely fascinating. Researchers at Brigham Young University, BYU, spent years conducting rigorous testing on the shelf life of food staples under controlled storage conditions. What they found completely changed the industry's understanding of how long food can actually last. Their conclusion was this: properly packaged, low-moisture staple foods can remain both edible and nutritionally viable for 30 years or more. Not a decade, 30 years. The staples that achieved this extraordinary shelf life include hard white wheat, white rice, rolled oats, and pasta for the grain category, with a combined target of around 300 pounds per adult per year. Legumes, beans, lentils, and split peas at roughly 60 pounds per person annually, sugar or honey around 70 pounds, which serves both as a calorie source and a preservation agent, and salt about 8 pounds, which is essential for flavoring, preservation, and basic physiological function. Cooking oil is also part of the long-term foundation at approximately 10 quarts per person per year, but with one critical difference. Oil does not achieve the 30-year shelf life that the dry goods do. It must be rotated more frequently, typically every 1 to 4 years depending on the type and storage conditions. This is not a flaw in the system, it's just the chemistry of fats. You plan for it. Now, here's something that the BYU research made very clear, and it's worth paying close attention to because it has real money implications. Not all shelf-stable foods are equal. White rice, 30-plus years when properly stored. Hard wheat, same. Pinto beans, decades of viability. But powdered eggs showed significant quality degradation over time in both taste and nutritional value, performing far worse than the marketing on survival food products would suggest. Non-fat dry milk holds its quality for about 15 years under ideal conditions. Dehydrated carrots top out at around 10 years. These aren't failures, they're just realities. Knowing them means you spend your money on what actually delivers, and you rotate what doesn't last as long. The picture that emerges from all of this research is a two-tiered system that builds on itself. Your 3-month layer of everyday food sits on top of a deep foundation of long-lasting staples, and together they cover everything from a week-long power outage to a sustained economic disruption. But there's a hidden problem in this picture that most people building a food supply never see coming until it's too late.
It just requires intentionality. Storing 1 bottle of 365-count multivitamins per person per year gives you a daily safety net for every micronutrient your grain and legume base lacks. It takes up almost no space and costs very little. For vitamin C specifically, you can also stock dedicated tablets as a backup. For B12 and complete protein, canned salmon, tuna, and chicken are your best tools. These are shelf-stable, widely available, affordable in bulk, and they pull double duty, addressing both the neurological need for B12 and the muscle maintenance need for complete amino acids. Canned greens and fortified powdered milk contribute meaningfully to calcium intake and help protect bone density during extended periods of restricted diet. And then there's something the preparedness community often overlooks entirely because it sounds trivial compared to vitamins and protein: comfort food. Hard candy, instant coffee, cookies, hot chocolate, familiar flavors, and small indulgences. During extended high-stress situations, morale is not a luxury, it's a survival variable. The psychological toll of eating the same bland staple meals day after day in an already stressful context is real and measurable. Comfort foods are the cheapest morale investment you can make, and their shelf life is often excellent. Don't skip them. Now, all of this, the nutrients, the staples, the canned proteins, means nothing if your storage environment is quietly destroying everything you've built. And this is where most people's plans have a silent flaw they never discover until they open a container and find the contents ruined. Preparedness experts use an acronym to describe the 4 enemies of shelf life: HALT, humidity, air, light, and temperature. And of the 4, temperature is the most destructive and the most commonly underestimated. The 30-year shelf life figures from BYU's research assume a consistent storage temperature of 75 degrees Fahrenheit or cooler. That sounds easy to achieve until you realize where most people actually store their food. The garage and the attic are the 2 most popular locations people choose for food storage. They're also the worst possible choices. Both of these spaces are subject to extreme temperature swings throughout the year. In summer, attic temperatures can climb well above 100 degrees. Garages fluctuate with outdoor temperatures. And here's the critical fact: a storage temperature just 10 degrees higher than the recommended 75 degrees can cut the effective shelf life of dehydrated vegetables by more than half. You could do everything else right and still lose years of shelf life and hundreds of dollars of investment simply by putting your supplies in the wrong room. The right location is a dark interior closet, a basement if you have one, somewhere that maintains a stable, cool temperature year-round, away from exterior walls, away from windows, and away from any heat source. Ground level is better than elevated. Interior is better than exterior. Cool and consistent beats cold and variable. Beyond location, the container you use determines how well you're protecting against humidity, air, and light. Number 10 cans, the large commercial-style metal cans used by the LDS Church's home storage centers, are the gold standard for long-term storage. They are rigid, stackable, completely opaque, and when sealed correctly, they exclude both oxygen and moisture extremely effectively. For people who prefer to buy in bulk and package their own supplies, Mylar bags combined with oxygen absorbers are a highly effective and more flexible alternative. You can seal them in whatever quantity makes sense for your household, label them clearly, and store them in food-grade plastic buckets for additional protection. However, and this is a safety point that cannot be overstated, you must only seal foods with a moisture content of 10% or less in oxygen-free containers. Sealing any food that retains significant moisture in an anaerobic environment creates the exact conditions under which botulism thrives. Homemade jerky, soft-dried fruits, improperly dried vegetables, none of these should ever go into a sealed, oxygen-free container. The botulism toxin is odorless, colorless, and lethal. This is not a risk worth taking to save a few dollars.
Now, the final piece of the system is where you actually source everything, because the marketing around food preparedness is full of significant markups that can make the whole project feel far more expensive than it needs to be. The single best-kept secret in the preparedness world is the LDS Home Storage Centers. These are warehouses operated by the church that are open to the general public. You do not need to be a member. They sell pre-packed number 10 cans of rice, wheat, oats, beans, and other staples at near wholesale prices because they are not trying to make a profit. They are trying to help people become self-reliant. If there is one near you, it should be your first stop. Restaurant supply stores are your second best option. These are the places that supply actual commercial kitchens, and they sell large format bags of rice, beans, and flour at prices that reflect bulk purchasing rather than retail markup. You can take those bulk purchases home and repack them into food-grade plastic buckets yourself. For your 3-month everyday pantry layer, the best strategy is to watch your local grocery chain for what are called case-lot sales, annual or semi-annual events where stores discount canned goods significantly when purchased by the case. These sales are when you deepen your supply of canned vegetables, meats, and soups at the best possible price per unit. What you want to avoid is anything marketed specifically as survival food with dramatic packaging and extreme claims.
These products often carry a 300 to 500% markup over the exact same commodity product available at a restaurant supply store or storage center. You are paying for the branding and the fear, not the food. If you're looking at all of this and feeling overwhelmed by where to begin, here is a 30-day plan that breaks it into 4 manageable steps. In your first week, focus on securing 2 weeks' worth of your normal groceries and establishing your 72-hour water supply. This alone puts you significantly ahead of the average household. In week 2, do what experts call a HALT audit. Walk through your home and identify the coolest, darkest, most temperature-stable interior space you have. Clear it out and claim it for storage. This step costs nothing and is foundational to everything that follows. In week 3, make your first bulk purchase of a long-term staple, a 25-pound bag of white rice, a case of pinto beans, something concrete that begins your deep foundation layer. And in week 4, take an hour to inventory and date everything you've accumulated. Label it, organize it front to back using the FIFO method, and write down what you have. Knowing what you have is just as important as having it. The goal here has never been to build a bunker or to prepare for the worst-case version of every scenario. The goal is a resilient household, one that can absorb a disruption, whether that disruption is a Category 4 hurricane, a week-long power outage, or simply a grocery bill that's 40% higher next year than it is today. 1 extra can this weekend. That's the starting line. Everything else builds from there. If this video gave you something useful, please take a second to like it. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need this information. And if you want more content on building a smarter, more resilient kitchen, subscribe to Food Decider. We'll see you in the next one.